Hey guys, welcome to this month's edition to Agrilachia. What a tremendous night we have with two of my all-time favorite local foodies, Jonathan Piercy and Jenny Williams, talking about just a pair that sure going to teach you a lot about food and cooking. But they're going to have you rolling in your seats. They're going to be talking about all things Appalachian, which we are really excited about. So welcome to Agrilachia. Please, if you don't mind, hit the share button, share it out with your friends. We will be here for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so talking about cooking and Thanksgiving and a little bit of everything. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Piercy and Jenny and turn it over to them.
Well, I haven't said this in a while. Hey, Jenny, what's cooking?
Not much. What's cooking with you, Jay?
Okay, I'm hearing that pixelated thing from you that we were hearing earlier. I don't know what the deal is.
Maybe I've become pixelated.
I think you've just become pixelated over time. That's just what's happened. But yeah, I can barely hear you. It's I don't know what's going on with it.
Jason, got any feedback?
Dunno. Still, yeah, still about the same.
Well, you sound great.
Okay, there you go. That's much better.
Oh, yay. Good.
Don't know what happened there. So let's try this again. Hey, Jenny,
Cheers.
what's cooking?
Cheers.
Sláinte.
Not much. What's cooking with you?
Well, I think that this is fun. I've been looking forward to this. I think this is a, this is a chance that we've always talked about doing a bit of a reunion, and I'm glad that we were able to do it tonight for our friends at the Heinemann Settlement School. So I guess we should probably explain to people maybe who haven't been around for that long, or what we're doing on this food show, on this food series that they have. What qualifies us to be part of this?
I ask myself what qualifies me to do almost everything that I do, but
doesn't stop.
We are, yeah, right. We're 2/3 of the whole that was What's Cooking Now, which was the world's only live radio cooking show that we knew of. We don't want to hear if you knew of another one.
No, don't tell us.
That aired for how many years?
We aired for 6 years in our incarnation. We should say we did not create What's Cooking Now. It was around for many years before us with a lot of other hosts. But we took the reins and we
created by the great Amelia Kirby, right?
For a few years. And yeah, we had a great time with it. And yeah, so that was way back in 2009. We ran from 2009 to 2015. We started with we had our friend Trisha Watts, who unfortunately could not be with us tonight, but she was our third host. And then after a while, she moved off, and we continued on as a duo of hosts with, of course, an amazing team behind us. My wife Tamara was a big part of that in helping us get our act together. Our friend Les was great at photography. We had a whole army of people who helped us, who were our kitchen help. And once a month, we just dragged a whole bunch of equipment into the break room over at the Apple Shop. And
the opulent Apple Shop kitchens, you mean?
Did a live radio show. You're pixelating again. I don't know what.
Am I pixelating again?
I'm going to close a bunch of things on my end and see if it's something that I'm doing.
Let me try and take my headphones out and see if that helps. Is this better or worse?
About the same.
Technology.
Yeah, I don't know what's up, but well, we'll keep trying. Maybe somebody on that end can figure out what's going on. If you're out there listening, let us know how things are sounding.
Corey says I'm echoey. Am I still echoey?
Yeah, somebody says whatever I did made you echoey, but I don't. I didn't really do anything except move my screen over to another. Move to a second screen over here. So I don't know what's going on.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but you're just very, very echoey. Let me let's see. Let me try switching microphones and seeing if it is on my end or something.
Okay, I doubt it is.
Let's see. Let me Let me try something here.
Hi to Tricia and Morgan Kirk and Corey Terry and Mandy and Linda Gayhart. Do I sound pixelated to
there
the
you
folks
go.
at home?
You sound much better. I think it might have been something on my end, actually, because I think I just switched microphones and you're much better. So,
okay. So back to What's Cooking Now.
Right,
One of the things that I missed most is Jim Webb. We couldn't talk about What's Cooking Now without talking about the inimitable Jim Webb, passed a little over a year ago, but it was one of our favorite parts was having Jim around and having him come in and date.
Jim had this enthusiasm for the show that, and a lot of times we were cooking things that Jim had never heard of or it would never have occurred to him, but it just delighted him so much. I mean, he just the way that we would talk about these things that we were cooking, and he would just, and I mean, it was because you run into so many people when you start talking about cooking unfamiliar things or cooking things that are unusual, and there's a little, there's always a little bit of disdain or sadness or trepidation or something. Not a thing for him. He was just so, even if he didn't like it, I mean, occasionally he would tell us, I don't care much for that, but he was just always so absolutely delighted by it, is the word that I would use, and just watch, and especially when you hit it, when you found something he really loved, it was just the best thing ever. When you made Jim happy. Yeah, it was. Jim was a big supporter of the show and was. It was just fantastic. I thought he was, a big part of it.
A glass to Jim.
Oh, definitely to Jim Webb, and to all of our, and we do want to give a shout out to our friends at WMT over there. We had a lot of people who really helped us with the show and who backed us every month and pushed it out there.
And they still have great programming. No cooking show these days, but tune in.
But we've been a hard act to follow. I understand. So we kind of did the show. I think we felt like it sort of ran its course. We did it for about 6 years. But Jenny, tell me this: when we started in 2009, who was talking about local food and local cooking and all that here in the 606? Who was talking about that when we started our show?
I'm going to say nobody.
Nobody. I'm going to say nobody, and I'm sure it wasn't nobody exactly. Don't write in no angry.
Nobody was having as much fun as we were.
Nobody was having much fun with it as we were, but it's but I think that when we started this show, it was really not that much of a thing that people were talking about local agriculture. And I mean, the Hazard Farmers Market was still being run by the city and ran about half the time. And, there weren't a whole lot in the way of local farms. I mean, I remember when Old Home Place Farm came along and we,
do you remember when Old Home Place Farm was just meat and Maggie was the Grow Appalachia coordinator at Pine Mountain Settlement Center, and they started dating, and we were like, oh my God, Ben Girl is going to marry Meat Boy, and they're all going to eat happily ever after. And we do.
And we're not taking credit for pushing them together or anything, but we're kind of taking credit for pushing them together a little bit. We're not taking no. We're not taking no credit.
Jonathan, I set up. Are we still real echoing out there?
I mean, you sound fine to me. We'll see. Everybody seems to be understanding what we're saying, but
we're good enough to listen to you twice. But so I set up behind me tonight is Thursday, and that means that in Hazard we have a pop-up market. And Old Home Place Farm delivers, and some other people, the Happy Hens, or another farmers that deliver. Are you getting information from there?
I'm sorry, I was being told about the echo that's happening in the on the Facebook feed. You all let us listening to the Facebook feed. Let us know how the sound is doing right now, because apparently in some people it's delaying and echoing and just not very good.
Well, I wanted to just turn my camera and show everybody the share that I got. So I signed up for a fall CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, which wasn't even a thing when we started doing the show, really. I wasn't sure what that was. I'm sure it was a thing, but it wasn't a thing here. I'm sure it was. So can you see all that? I'm having trouble figuring it out. There.
Yes.
Having trouble figuring it out. So that's tonight's share. So there's kale, watermelon radishes, sweet potatoes, Chinese cabbage, in it. I'm like hearing myself twice. It's really weird. And it's delicious and delightful, and I'm really excited about it.
So I'm plugging some headphones in, and you know, this was just exciting. It was just a great thing to be, because I feel like as local, we were a bit of a hub for a long time. I mean, as people who, you know, came along who were excited about food, they found us. People who had some interest in that, they found us, or we found them, or something happened that we managed to connect to those people. And I think that, so, you know, I consider us, you know, and certainly people have come along and done a lot of work in this arena since we, since our show started, and really since it ended. But I think that we left a little bit of a legacy, and I like that. So, you know, that's pretty cool.
Me too. But so let's move on. So back then, tell me, Jonathan, how have you changed as a cook since you started the show, however many years ago that was?
How have I changed as a cook? I think that for me, it's, you know, I've gotten fairly busy, especially in the last year. I started a new job about 6 months ago that has kept me fairly busy. So I think the thing that's changed for me is that I've really kind of started taking seriously the idea that I don't have time to cook every night, or I don't have energy to cook every night. So if there's anything that's changed for me, it's that I'm probably cooking less. I'm not cooking as much, and this is something that I've tried to do deliberately, but I've never quite managed. But you know, I feel like I've mostly that's the main thing. I feel like I'm cooking things that are a little bit more simple. You know, I try to, because I still try to expand the repertoire. That's the hard part is, for me, and this is the big thing that's happened to me since COVID. I've definitely hit the wall a few times in the pandemic era, especially when there were, you know, not a lot of places to eat out and that sort of thing. You know, and sometimes, you know, we and Tam and I, you know, typically would travel a lot. We, you know, we're the types that are on the road, you know, a couple of months out of the, you know, a couple of weekends out of a month, either just going someplace or going to play music or going to, you know, do something. And that tends to break it up. That tends to break up the cooking monotony. You know, it's just a weekend. I don't have to cook anything, and I don't have to, you know, eat my own.
You get to try something new. You get to
I might get to eat something different. So that was what surprised me the most in the last little bit. So I've really had to try to. I mean, there have been times when I've kind of gotten to the wall and said, I can't do it anymore. I mean, I just couldn't bring myself to get up and cook. But I've pushed through it. I mean, I've managed to, and I usually just try to find something new or find something, you know, something different to do, and I get back on the horse. But what about you? How do you feel your cooking has changed since what's cooking nowadays?
I don't know. I think I've become even more ingredient driven. So I was always pretty ingredient driven. And by that, I mean, instead of thinking I want to make this or learn to make this, this dish, I tended to go to the grocery store or the farmer's market and see, ooh, this looks really good. What can I make with it? And I think I've embraced that and leaned into it even more as so many amazing foods have become available to me that have been locally grown and locally produced. I've really become more ingredient driven, and I think I've gotten a little simpler too. You know, and I've also really sort of started to embrace not cooking when I go places, because when I go to parties, or not that we have those anymore, in the before times when I would go to parties or we would have office potlucks, you know, I used to want to show off. And I let me just be clear too. I cook for people because I want to show off. I cook for people because I want people to tell me that they love me. But I kind of stopped doing that because there was always so much food, and half the time I would cook some weird shit that nobody liked to eat anyway. And I have embraced, I guess this isn't really answering the question, how have I changed as a cook, but I have become more able to just eat. I love to, that's the thing about COVID that I've missed the most, is feeding other people, having parties, and eating other people's food. You know, I love to eat things other people cook. And I love to cook for people, and I love to cook with people and in community. And I've really, really missed that this pandemic.
Thing, and we had a potluck at my work, and we had we have a couple of vegetarians, and they were talking about, and we just brought all the food in. We just got Food City to make all the food, and I think we got a vegetarian pizza to kind of, and they were saying, for our vegetarians, and I thought, oh, I can do vegetarian Thanksgiving. I can so do vegetarian, and but I couldn't. I can't. You just really can't do that. I mean, it's just not. The whole potluck thing is just not happening, and it's it's hard in general, just because I'm trying to pull together a new residency program and trying to make, build some cohesion, and it's amazing how often we do that around food. That we would do that around bring people together for a lunch or for a cookout or something like that. And if you don't have the option of kind of coming together and eating as a group, it's hard. I mean, it's just hard to function if you don't have that option. So I think
it really is.
So other than that, what have you? I know you've learned some new cooking techniques. You've learned some new things. What have you got for us tonight?
Well, I really miss, for the last few years, we have had an old moldy night party, and we've served aspics. And so we've done that. In fact, Jonathan, here, I brought this to give back to you. You brought it to the party last year, and I never returned it. So you go. So I made tonight, I love aspics, and sometimes I think I used to think I was one of the only people in the world who loved aspics, and then I discovered a whole Facebook group and discovered that I am not. But there's an aspic that my dear friend Betty Jane Combs always made, and it was a horseradish. She called it the horseradish mold. And her version, which I think was a pretty Southern thing, had lemon jello. It was very sweet. It had horseradish sauce and heavy cream. And some, little lemon juice, salt, and pepper. So I've played with that recipe over the years, swapping out unflavored gelatin and lemon juice. I put sorghum in it. I've done all kinds of things. But tonight I made this because I was missing Old Moldy Night. I'm going to see if I can hold it up without it sliding off the plate. I don't know if I can. Maybe I can tilt my camera down. But this one is the best one. Can you see that I've ever made? So what I did with this one is I was actually looking up a recipe to see the ratio of the liquid to the gelatin, and I saw a recipe that I did not make, but that looks really good that I want to make, that had apple cider and it had fennel in it. It had a whole bunch of stuff in it, and I thought I should put apple cider. I have some apple cider. I should put it in this, and so I bloomed the gelatin in the apple cider while it was cold, and then I heated that up a little bit, and then I used, prepared horseradish, so not the sauce. I would love to get my hands on some fresh horseradish to do this, but I used the prepared horseradish, and then some lemon juice, and just some. I've been really in love with this Penzi spice salt and pepper blend that's supposed to be Szechuan pepper. I don't think it really is, but I really like it, and so it looks really pretty. I really like the way it looks. I'm going to try to show you again. I don't know how to do this. The pepper is kind of on the top, and then I cut up some stuff from Old Home Place Farm. So some carrots from Old Home Place Farm, some of these beautiful watermelon radishes, and then some little carrots and some salad turnips, which I love, to serve this with. So that's one thing that I've been making that I'm really loving. I've got another thing that I'll talk about in a little bit, and some condiments. But what have you been cooking lately, Jonathan?
I talked about how a lot of times my repertoire has leaned more toward the easy. And one thing that I've embraced pretty hard is a device that some of you have probably heard of called the Instant Pot. And I know what you're saying. I know you're saying, Jonathan, you're not some kind of food blog mom, one of those people who writes, who can't print a recipe without 14 pages of exposition about how she loves cooking for DH and her 14 children.
And story. You always have to have a story.
You have to have the story about how you came to this pot roast recipe. But these people who embrace the Instant Pot. So what kind of live, laugh, love bullshit is this? Is what you're saying. And what I'm saying is that the Instant Pot is a wonderful thing. And I'm saying the pressure cooker is a wonderful thing. And you want to talk about Appalachian cooking? Find me somebody in Appalachia who has not does not have a childhood memory of being in their mama's kitchen or their mother's kitchen or their great grandmother's kitchen with that pressure cooker going, with that with the little thing on top.
Like a bomb about to go off.
Yeah, it's like a bomb about to go off. And if your family was anything like mine, you were not allowed to run, through the kitchen because everybody thought, those, and everybody thought this thing was going to explode. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of
They did. Did you ever explode one?
No, I never exploded.
Oh my God, I did.
Oh yeah?
I didn't. I did not explode it in much the same way as you and I did not start a fire at Crystal's wedding. But I was in the vicinity when it happened. We were cooking green beans and somehow that little hole got clogged up and the thing flew off, and you wouldn't believe how much beans could come through that tiny little hole. They were everywhere. It was when I was in college.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's it's an incredible device, and everybody knows if they ever listen to our show, they know how my favorite science is my favorite ingredient, and the pressure cooker is just such a nifty thing. I mean, people don't think about how it works, but essentially what you're doing is it's for the kind of the opposite reason that water boils at 212 degrees at sea level. We know that, but if you go to Denver, Colorado, it's
you know that most people probably don't know that.
I think most people know that. Most people who are not English professors know that. All right, but if you go to Denver, then water boils at about 202 degrees because you're way up high and because there's less pressure around. Because instead of the atmospheric pressure at sea level, it's about 15 psi. It's about 12 in Denver. So that makes it go down. Well, you can go the other way. You can make it go up. So you could say you went up to 30 or 35 psi, like the inside of your tires. So if you could go inside your tire and set up a little stove and then try to boil water on that stove, because there's so much pressure pushing down on the water, it takes more pressure for it to build up, for the water to build up to become heat. So if you were inside that tire, it would take a lot more heat and water would boil at a much higher temperature. So water would boil inside that tire, which might be 30 or 35 psi. Water would boil at about 250 degrees. Well, that's exactly what's happening inside your pressure cooker. Is the pressure is building in there so much that that water is just boiling much, much hotter. And if you think, 212 to 250 degrees doesn't sound like that much difference. Think about how much difference it makes between, 170 degrees, which is a hot shower, to 212 degrees, which is boiling something. That's a huge difference. So 212 to 250 is another huge difference. So that's why a pressure cooker works so well. And what you can do is you can do hours and hours of cooking in a very short period of time. And the Instant Pot, the great thing about it is that it does a lot of things. You can actually, you can sear things in it. You can, and you can,
Good job, Joe.
and it doesn't have the little, so it doesn't, it doesn't have that element of danger, which admittedly is a downside.
So it's not nearly as satisfying.
It's not nearly as cool or satisfying, but it's still, but as far as convenience, it's hard to beat. And what I like to do is, as I have kind of a formula, I'll have, maybe a 2-pound, roast. I'll have, and we get a lot of our meat from Old Home Place. And they have a lot of things that come in about 2-pound roast. So you can buy, say, a 5-pound roast, cut it in half. And that's dinner for us for a couple of nights.
That's perfect. It's perfect when you have a small household.
Yeah, when you have a small household, I think that's good. But one of those plus I buy in bulk, the cartons of chicken stock, one of those plus plus whatever starches I've got, plus some onions, plus whatever, and then just put it on high pressure for 45 minutes, and that's really become I do this at least once a week. That standard thing. And just embracing the pressure cooker is something that I never thought I would do. I mean, until the Instant Pot came along, I was never one of those who, it just always seemed like a lot of trouble for some reason. But it just makes it so much easier that you can, this thing that has an insert, you can pop out and put it in the dishwasher. That's another big thing. But I think embracing that convenience has been a big deal for me. I do want to ask if you all have questions. Of course, we're on the, we have some that have been asked. My friend Emily Fleischer up in Indianapolis, hey, Emily, has been asked, what are we drinking? Asked specifically what I'm drinking, but I suppose you can answer too. I'm drinking an Aviation, which is, one of my favorites, gin and maraschino liqueur and lemon juice and a little creme de violette, just to make it kind of purplish, because you can't quite see it, but it has a little bluish tinge, and that's why it's called an aviation. But
and it matches your shirt.
It does. Kind of goes with my cocktail. My friend Jody Damon Williams, I hope she's out there. She's been doing some beautiful custom tie-dye since this whole pandemic thing started, and I've bought a few of her shirts because they're just this awesome. What are you drinking there, Jenny?
No.
I'm having a Campari and soda, and I'm having it because I don't have any Amaro, which is something somehow I'd never heard of until a couple of weeks ago when I was lucky enough to run in to the beautiful Melissa Booth and Kristen Smith. And they introduced me to the joys of Amaro, which is kind of a bitter liqueur, which I love those bitter flavors. And I just tasted it with them, but there are lots of different cocktails you can make with it. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to pick up any before I left Charleston. And I wish I had, because Highwire Brewery makes one that we tasted, which was fabulous. But it reminded me a lot of Campari. And so earlier, what I really wanted to do was to call you and have you walk me through. I thought we could do this as part of the show. And then I realized it would just be too much. I was going to lay out all my stuff, any liquor I had, any mixers, and I was going to have you walk me through making a cocktail, because your cocktails are always perfect and perfectly balanced. Mine are never that good, so I'm just trying to stay pretty simple with it. But that's what I am drinking tonight. You're still muted.
I love Campari and soda or Amari. I think I talked about Amari on a certain cooking show at least once or twice in past years. You should probably have watched it. It was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, that's just one of those things that, especially when I travel a little bit, and just embracing the aperitif. I love the aperitif, the sort of bitter, the little bit of bitter, a little bit of soda, that sort of thing. And it's one of those things that you can drink a fair bit of and not, to be honest, I mean, probably one of the things that's changed as much as anything since I left the show. I don't drink a whole lot anymore. I just don't really drink a lot. And that's not, I've not made a conscious effort to not drink. I just don't. I don't know why. So I find that I'm a bit of in this way and this way only, a little bit of a lightweight when it comes to cocktails anymore. I can't quite, I can't really slam them down like I maybe once could. So I think I've really appreciated the lighter boozy cocktails like that. You're muted.
In Asheville. I was in Asheville a couple of summers ago, I guess. And I was in that little bar. What's that Indian place? Chai Pani. And they've got that bar that's like down underneath. This was in the before times. And we were having a drink, Mark and I, and somebody came in and they ordered a drink, and it was a Stroh's beer with Campari poured into it. And I think a lime. And that was really tasty.
I had just a few weeks ago, we went to a wonderful dinner with Sam Four from Tuk Tuk Sri Lankan Bite. She had a pop-up dinner in Lexington, and we went, and one of the cocktails that they had was it was a specially infused, it was like a coconut infused shot of Old Forester with a Miller High Life Shorty with curry leaf bitters in it. Which was actually pretty fantastic. I mean, it was just simple enough, but the flavors really came through. Yeah, it was something else. So
I saw that.
Yeah, it was great.
So our good friend Sarah Beth is asking about Thai chili peppers. What do you think she should do with them? I say ferment those bad boys, make some sauce.
And fermentation is one of those things that shouldn't it's another thing I've probably done a lot more of since I left the show. But what you should buy, what everybody I think should have if they're interested in this, is there's a book called The Art of Fermentation by a guy named Sandor Katz, and it's a just tome of a book. I mean, it's 3 inches thick, and it's basically 500 pages of telling you just don't worry about it. Just let it go. It's an ancient process. People have been fermenting for thousands of years. You don't have to have a bunch of special equipment. I mean, there is some that's helpful, but for the most part, it kind of tells you when this happens, you've got to throw it out because it's bad. But otherwise, here's what you don't worry about. And here's the thing: you make about a 2% brine solution, so 2% by weight of salt into water, and put anything in that. put something to weigh it down so it's submerged in it, and let it sit, and it'll ferment. You can put an airlock on top of it if you want. That'll just help keep some nasties out. But you can also just put a paper towel over it, and put it in a jar, put a paper towel over it. That's what I would do with a bunch of Thai bird chilies. I think that is that would be delicious. And then once those are fermented, you can just blend them up, and you've just got a hot sauce. Another thing you could do with those is freeze them. Thai bird chilies freeze really well, and they come right out, and you can use them. They thaw so quickly that they're very easy to.
Because they're so tiny.
So definitely a thought there. If you have any questions, we'll have a little more Q&A toward the end of this thing. So one thing we want to talk about, this was just sort of an interesting thing that came up in a conversation a few weeks ago. So many of you may have heard of a little book and a little movie that's coming out called Hillbilly Elegy. Yeah, I know. Don't boo, vote. But this book is coming out, and one of the scenes in this book is where our intrepid hero, J.D. Vance, hero of Appalachia, goes off to Yale, and because he is uncultured Appalachian type, he goes to a fancy dinner at Yale, and there are so many forks laid out, and he just doesn't know which fork to use when, and this just makes me roll my eyes pretty hard, because for one thing, this is just hack writing. Okay, because if you think about fish out of water, this is the biggest cliche. And we actually, a lot of us were discussing this and kind of trying to trace this cliche back. Where does this start of the array of forks? And I think where it cemented into most of our minds actually was a movie called Pretty Woman that we may all remember from about 1990, where there's a scene where this happened. But this certainly is a trope that goes back for years. But we thought about this. We were talking about this and saying, is this a thing that has ever happened? Jenny, you've probably been to a fancy dinner or two in your life. Have you ever been presented with a dizzying array of forks?
Well, if I may lay my white privilege out on display for everyone, I always knew what fork to use because my mother taught me. I grew up in Hazard, Kentucky, and there are so many different stories. So this is why J.D. Vance drives me. Well, there are many reasons, but one of them is that he's just perpetuating that myth that there's this one monolithic story about Appalachia. Kayla Ray Whitaker, who wrote the fabulous book, The Animators, just wrote a really, I thought, quite scathing and really interesting review of Hillbilly Elegy, both the book and the movie. And she said, you're just selling this idea that we've all learned about in our Appalachian Studies class about how Appalachians are the other, right? That we're not them, but and I remember when I was younger, I felt sometimes like a fraud when I tried to claim an Appalachian identity because, I didn't have and I felt kind of like I can't really speak for Appalachia, or I can't be Appalachian because, my dad was a doctor and my mom was a stay-at-home mother, and she taught me how to set the table and use a dizzying array of forks. They weren't dizzying to me, but they may have been to J.D. Vance, I guess. And just that idea that, first of all, anybody gives a shit which fork you use. If you're hanging out with people who care which fork you use, you probably need to get some new friends. Really? Unless you've been invited like to visit the Queen of England, then it shouldn't matter what fork you use. And to use that, like you said, Jonathan, is just this tired hack trope to show that he's so uncultured when he didn't even grow up here, first of all. It's just tiresome. And the idea that nobody would know which fork to use is a little tiresome also. And the idea that it matters or that that's some signifier is just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
This, and again, going back to the history, the whole having a whole lot of forks to use is a Victorian thing, as so many, prissy things are. But even when you look back that far, you rarely find anything with more than 3 forks involved. You rarely find table settings with more than 3 forks that are laid out for you. And I'm not sure I've ever been to a dinner where there were more than 3. I can't recall specifically one with more than 2 in front of me at the start. Because modern dining really, they bring you your, if there's an oyster course, they bring you the oyster fork with the oysters. But I've been to a few fancy dinners, and one that I recall was in Louisville at a fairly fancy club there that was, definitely fancier than me. And I was, and I was at the time I was there kind of. I didn't think to bring a jacket because I knew I was having dinner here, but it didn't occur to me that they might want me to wear a dinner jacket, and I didn't really, I didn't have a great one at the time. So I felt a little bit out of place, and I feel like there were some people at my table, and it was at a conference I was speaking at, so I was kind of at the table with some of the old guard, I guess, the people who were members of this club who were, and I remember the wife of one of them, who you would absolutely, I mean, there's nobody who would say she wasn't the classiest person at this table, but she had but the way she kind of focused in and did everything she could to make me feel comfortable during that dinner. She, and this was, I mean, she was probably as old school Southern money as you'd ever find. I mean, she was really that old, very upper, her grandmother's grandmother was probably the upper crust, but the way she kind of saw, and it's one of those things you would barely even notice if you weren't paying attention to it, that it was just such a practiced thing that she sought out the person at the table who's feeling uncomfortable and made me feel comfortable. And that really set my definition of class. Really, that was one of those things that made me feel much, changed the way that I thought about what class is, because that's what it is. And to me, that is far more I found that to be the rule more than the exception. Because I'm not sure that there's one person, I don't even think at Yale, probably not even the fancy clubs at Yale, you're going to find anybody who, can successfully navigate whatever, rituals that they're in. And I think that it's a discomfort. I mean, it's somebody's own discomfort that you can't, just watch what other people are doing, for one thing, and use the right, or just, and maybe ask somebody, maybe use your words and ask somebody, hey, what's this fork for? I don't know. This whole thing has just bugged me, but and to me, it's one of those things that kind of lays hillbilly. It's like you say, lays hillbilly elegy bare, because it's just one of those things that it's like you wrote it without actually going there. Like, I can't remember I was just reading about something a while back about an event that somebody wrote a huge article about. It was somebody who wrote about the punk clubs, it was about the disco clubs. It was a famous article about disco. And somebody wrote this big famous article. It was actually the article that became Saturday Night Fever, that became the script was based on. And it turns out that the person who wrote the article about these disco clubs never actually got there, never actually made it to the disco clubs. He didn't go. Something happened to his car on the way. This is a great story. I'll post about it later, but the guy just said, he couldn't, but he just wrote the story anyway and made it all up. So just made everything up. And that's what became Saturday Night Fever, and oddly enough, it all became what disco was.
And that's what Kayla Ray Whitaker, that's exactly what she says about Hillbilly Elegy, is that J.D. Vance, like, what does Hillbilly Elegy do? It's creating this myth as much as it is, more than it is telling about it. And the other thing she pointed out in her article that I had not considered, that I thought was really interesting, is how many progressive, like she says, progressive, left-leaning, NPR mug having people bought into this. That's who bought that book. That's who bought that book. That's who believes that stuff. And it's like Appalachians are the last little group that anybody, even progressive liberals, can believe is some kind of a problem. But when I look around, and admittedly I probably have rose-colored glasses and I'm a little Pollyanna-ish about it, I really feel confident and excited that Central Appalachia is coming into a time of great transition and change for really fun stuff. The local food movement is just one thing, but like we've pointed out so many times, food is at the nexus of everything. The economy, health, culture, art, education. Food is at the center of, or at least at the crossroads of all of those things where they cross. And I think the fact that our local food movement is so vibrant and exciting, and that it's, Appalachian food's having a moment, people know who Ronnie Lundy is all over the country, and they should, because she's amazing. So Appalachian food's kind of having a moment. And I really think that that's a portent of what's going to come for Central Appalachia. I think, here's my prediction. I really think that one of the fallouts, or one of the after effects of this pandemic, is going to be that a lot of people all around the country are first going to realize that they can work remotely. And if we can get our broadband figured out in this region, I think they're going to want to come and live in places like this. I talk to friends of mine who live in big cities or who live in other places, and they have felt really isolated during this pandemic. They can't see anybody. Just leaving their apartments and getting into the elevator and going someplace is just fraught. And I mean, it's been okay for me, really. I can stand out on my front porch and talk to my neighbors and have 10 conversations before 9 o'clock in the morning. And if I want to go out and be in nature, like our good friends Carla Gover and Melissa Helton say, we just have to go out and go up. I mean, we're there. So I really think that Central Appalachia is going to become a more and more desirable place to live. I think we probably, I think we probably can adapt to the cataclysmic climate change that's going to start happening, maybe a little better than other parts of the country are adapting. I think people here are really cool and fun and nice. We have amazing food and an amazing culture. And so I really think that we're going to see Central Appalachia over the next 20 years really blossom into a place where a lot of people want to come and live and work and play. And I think that's partly because there are so many people here working to make it a place where people want to live and work and play. JD Vance, I think, just doesn't get that. I think he'll cash in. I think he'll run for office. He'll cash in. He's part of that. I don't really want to get into the whole app harvest thing because I'm afraid of whose toes I might step on. But, he's kind of trying to invest in that. And I just, I don't think he gets it. You don't get to claim. I have one other thing to say, and then I'll stop on this rant. As our dear friend Les Roll points out, Les and you, Jonathan, and me and Tamara, we're here and we're drinking the water and we're sending our kids to the schools and we're living this life. And it's not because we have some granny up in a holler that gave us 16 cast iron skillets. We don't have to be from here to be of here. We don't have to be from here to be part of what's happening here. And we don't have to be from here to talk about this region. But we cannot be not from here and pretend to know everything about the region. And that is what pisses me off about JD Vance, is that he didn't really experience this at all. And yet he claims and has been, it's not just him I'm pissed off at. Not only does he claim to speak for the region, but this whole group of people believe that he does. They believe that he has some insight. And they should be reading things like Hill Women. They should be reading things like The Animators from Kayla Ray. They should be reading things like Robert Geip's amazing trilogy. If they really want to see what Appalachia's like, we're not trying to whitewash it and say that it's perfect. We're just saying there are a lot more stories here that deserve to be told.
JD Vance, what he's part of is the Appalachian diaspora, and I know a little bit about the Appalachian diaspora in southwestern Ohio, because that's basically most of my family. I mean, my dad was one of the ones that stayed around. My grandmother was one of the ones that stayed around, but all their brothers and sisters, or the majority of their brothers and sisters, moved to southwestern Ohio and worked in factories and had good union jobs. And there's so many interesting stories to be told within that diaspora without acting like you're speaking for a region that you didn't live in, and it's to me, there's just so much interesting. There's so much, juice there, and even his experience of that doesn't really speak to my experience exactly. He seems to even homogenize that part of it. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that Appalachia's having a moment. I hope that this is not, and I hope that it's having a moment despite that, despite the fact that this book is getting out there and getting some popularity. But but you're right. We're a place that, I've talked a lot. I've in a lot of program director meetings and such, I've talked a lot about, everybody saying, how do you adapt to all this? And I said, well, I've been working remotely for a long time. Working remotely is what we do. We've been social distancing in Appalachia for 200 years. This is our this is what we do. We're kind of used to this to all this sort of thing. So I think for a lot of us, it hasn't changed our lives that much. And you're right. I think that it's that the world is probably gonna lean our way a little bit as people realize that they don't have to live in a big city to make their money. One thing that this all has taught us is that not everybody needs to go into an office every day. I'm doing 90% of my job from home now. and most people, a lot of people can do that. I don't know about most people, but there's an awful lot of people who can do their work remotely. And I've known several people who've moved in here who've had good jobs elsewhere, and they're just doing them from here. So I think you're absolutely right. We'll move on. We've complained about JD enough, so we'll get on to some lighter topics. So Jenny, what's your plan for Thanksgiving?
That I'm accustomed. I really do miss having big parties, and I miss being around everybody. And our Thanksgiving is usually pretty huge. I'm the youngest of 6, and we all have kids, and we've got people who are like family to us. And we typically will have about 50 people for Thanksgiving, and we're just not going to do it this year. So I think that my children and I are just going to eat small. Interestingly, my daughter's really excited about this. She said, "Mom, we've never done that with just us before." And I think she's kind of looking forward to it. So I hope, and I know that I'm speaking again from a place of privilege, but I hope that this year's smaller Thanksgiving makes us both, all of us, appreciate those bigger Thanksgivings that we have, but also just kind of take the time to appreciate our smaller ones. So I have not decided at all what I'm going to cook. I'm going to talk to Carson. My son Carson's working now as a cook at Old Vine Bistro in Lexington. So I might just have him cook everything for a change. And I haven't quite figured out what exactly we'll do for Thanksgiving, but I'm really looking forward to, like I said, I got my CSA vegetable pickup tonight. Most of the stuff will still be good. So I'll figure out, I'm really looking forward to the sweet potatoes. And if I can, just while we are talking about food, and I think, so this is something I have just discovered, and I'm sure I'm going to say it wrong. So please correct me out there in Facebook land. But I think you say it gochujang. Is that right? Does anybody want to correct me? And so this is from, did you want to pronounce it for me, Jonathan?
Gochujang, I think, is gochujang. I think it's how I've heard it. I don't know.
This is from Yago Farms, which is a place in Lexington, and she's really, really interested in using Appalachian ingredients to produce foods that are like the foods that she's grown up with. And this has pawpaws in it, and it's fabulous. And I remember years ago being in a Chinese restaurant up in Chicago and having sweet potatoes that were glazed with like a hoisin sauce. So I'm going to do something with these. I think that's going to be a lot of fun for Thanksgiving. So I'm probably going to have a pretty vegetable forward Thanksgiving. I don't have a turkey. I'm probably not going to cook one. I'll cook some other kind of meat. What are you going to do?
Well, now that you've brought it up, probably something with gochujang. It's something that I've had in my. I don't have the Yago Farms version. I've been trying to get my hands on some of that and haven't managed to do so. But but I keep the regular, which comes in a big red tub, almost like a butter tub, and lives forever. So it'll live in your fridge for forever. Because it's fermented peppers and salt, and it's just one of those things that. It's a fairly simple condiment, but it's really delicious. And I think that with sweet potatoes, you're right. I think that's definitely an idea I'm stealing. We're kind of in the same boat in that we've had, my family usually gets together, and it's not quite the scrum that yours is, but we do have quite a few of us. And we last year we did it at my sister's house in Louisville. The plan was the same this year, but one side of the family has had some fairly recent health issues that they can't really come around, and even with all this, even before restrictions came out yesterday, we had long since decided that we just couldn't do it this year with everything that's going on, and with I work in a hospital part of the time, and so it's hard to justify it. But so yeah, we're kind of down to 2. And I remember the last time that we celebrated Thanksgiving with just the 2 of us was the first Thanksgiving that we when we moved to North Carolina. And I had to work that year.
We both had to work
that year. So we just decided we were going to make our own Thanksgiving dinner. And then when it started, we sat down and started thinking about, well, what are the dishes that mean Thanksgiving to you, that make your Thanksgiving, you can't have Thanksgiving without? Well, mine were things like, dressing with turkey and dressing, and mashed potatoes and gravy and yeast rolls, and cranberry sauce. For Tam, it was completely different. It was sweet potatoes, and it was a cranberry salad that her grandmother. The point is, these things didn't overlap at all. But we cooked them all anyway, and we ended up having about 14 dishes between the 2 of us for Thanksgiving. So that And so I think we're probably not going to go that far. We'll probably manage to pare the menu down a little bit this time. Maybe, I don't know if we will or not, but yeah, and I think I will do turkey just because I like cooking turkeys. And I'll probably do a very small one that I'll freeze a lot of, and then try to make leftovers out of for many days. But somebody was asking us about vegetarian Thanksgiving. Sarah Beth, I think, was asking us about vegetarian Thanksgiving suggestions, and I think vegetarian Thanksgiving is the easiest thing in the world because, I mean, as Jenny's pointed out many times, the turkey is, the turkey's not exactly secondary to me because, frankly, I cook a pretty good turkey, but the side dishes are what make it Thanksgiving, really, and those are usually pretty easy to make vegetarian. It's pretty easy to make veggie dressing. It's pretty easy to make veggie, all your sweet potato dishes. There's a lot of things that I end up cooking for Thanksgiving that end up being vegetarian without me even thinking about it. So I think that's a very easy thing to do.
One of my favorite Thanksgiving things. Cast your mind back. I don't know how many years ago this was, but when we did What's Cooking Now, every show had a theme. And so one year we did a postmodern Thanksgiving, and we deconstructed favorite Thanksgiving dishes. And I can't remember now what anybody made except for you, Jonathan. And Jonathan took turkey. He took turkey breasts and he sliced them thin and pounded them and breaded them and made turkey cutlets. But then this is the thing I want everyone to do, because I've done this ever since, and it is so amazing. He made a sage pesto. So he took, I think I remember this right. This is how I make it now anyway, about half parsley and half sage, because all sage is a little much. And olive oil and garlic and toasted walnuts. And I don't think there was cheese in it. I don't remember there being cheese in it. And it was not a loose pesto, but it was not a thick pesto either. And you serve those cutlets with that pesto drizzled over it. And it was the best thing I'd ever eaten. It was so good that I remember that night at Apple Shop, everybody always loved What's Cooking Now. They would stick around on those nights so they could come in and eat. And that particular night, there was a group of interns who were new. It was people that we didn't know, that we had never met. And that sage pesto was so damn good that I was taking the plates of people that I didn't even know and taking my finger and licking that sage pesto off because it was so incredible. And I've made that every year since because it's so good. Drizzled over turkey. It's good on sweet potatoes. It's good on everything. And that has, since that show, has been one of the things I always make for Thanksgiving. And I'll make it again this year. I love it, even if I don't have a turkey. But I'm really going to miss I like the leftovers more than I like the actual dinner. So I'm going to miss that a lot.
Yeah, the leftover remix process. One of the things that I made a few years ago that I really, I'm still pretty happy about. And it might have been for a party someplace. I don't think it was at your place. I think it was maybe at the, some of the children, but I got some egg roll wrappers, and I took my leftover turkey and I got some dressing and some sweet potatoes, I think, and I made egg rolls. With them.
That was for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think
over at High Street.
Yeah, I think over at High Street there was a sort of a Thanksgiving or something. But we had, but then I took the cranberry sauce and sort of added some orange and made a little sort of cranberry duck sauce out of it. And just the doing the remix for days is the fun thing. Plus, I just think that the most relaxing thing in the world, one of my favorite things in the world, is to have a day where I get up in the morning and I know there's a whole bunch of already cooked food in the refrigerator. And I don't have to do anything that day. That's why I think Black Friday is the silliest thing. Why would I leave my house that day? I mean, it's. I think our friend Laura Smith suggested that Black Friday be renamed Pie for Breakfast Day, because that should be the tradition that we embrace instead. And I'm sorry, anybody who thinks Black Friday is a good idea this year, I'm just going to say this: if you think Black Friday is a good idea this year, then we are going to put you in. You can go to Walmart. You show up to Walmart on Black Friday, and we're simply going to shut the doors and lock them and not open them back up. I feel the same way about cruise ships when they're talking about, starting cruise lines up. If people who think it's a good idea to get on a cruise right now, go and get on your cruise and we'll take it out to the middle of the ocean and just leave it there. That would probably be a net positive. But anyway, Black Friday shouldn't happen this year. Stay home, eat pie for breakfast. Later on, eat turkey sandwich remixes and, make it embrace that part of it, because everybody's going to cook too much. And this year, I mean, everybody's going to cook too much because, it's not like, you were at your grandmother's. It's like every single family is going to be there cooking too much. So you're definitely going to have too much this year. So embrace it. Spend a few days at home, enjoy it, have fun. and just try to live in and just live in that a little bit.
For us, so this is another reason, like I said, I'm glad to live in Eastern Kentucky, because I have for the last several years, I've always made it a point to go outside and go hiking on Black Friday. And there are corporations that have sort of monetized this and hashtagged it, but it's just always nice to get outside the day after you've eaten so much. And it's nice to get outside after the day you've eaten so much, after you've had pie for breakfast and before you come home and eat those leftovers. And I may have to get a turkey and cook it just for the leftovers, because my favorite thing to do with leftovers is, of course, to make a salad. So Jonathan used to say when we did the show that presented with any unfamiliar food, that Trisha would turn it into a sandwich and I would turn it into a salad. And he would do something inventive and beautiful with it. But I do love good Thanksgiving salad. And I usually will have some good greens around that time of the year, some good locally grown kale and turnip and some sort of heartier greens. And I like to do those with like some leftover turkey and whatever roasted vegetables, Brussels sprouts and stuff on it. And I'm really going to miss this year. My dear friend Ann Gilbert died. And she always made this cranberry thing that I loved. It was like whole cranberries, a whole orange, the rind, the pith, the seeds, everything, and like an onion and strawberry jello, weirdly. And you threw it into a food processor and you ground it up. And I loved this stuff. I love it. And I hope that her daughter Laura is going to come home and make it, because she can recreate it pretty well. But I would always take some of that and dollop that on that salad. It's good on leftovers and all kinds of stuff. So maybe I will have to go find a turkey and cook it.
Gilbert, I'll just mention that if anybody out there, and Jenny, if you have not watched the season of The Crown, Princess Margaret basically has Ann Gilbert's wardrobe. It's perfect. It was just, down to we're like, I think Ann had those sunglasses. So, it's pretty remarkable.
I am
90% sure that happened. I'm going through. We've had a few questions in the Heinemann Edible School asked us about. Since I mentioned butter tubs, just mentioned the sort of great Appalachian history of butter tubs. Wanted us to bring those up, and I think this is true. This is definitely something that I grew up with in that when there was a butter tub in the refrigerator, you never quite knew what was in it, but it probably wasn't butter. Probably was not the actual country crock that originated in it. But that I think is a definitely common experience in the Appalachian world. Betsy Whaley asked us if we have any favorite ways to cook duck. I've cooked a little bit of duck. The whole ducks are hard to cook. I think that the couple times I've tried it, they've been a little bit tough. I think that the best thing one thing that I love to do with duck is make prosciutto out of the breast, which is just the easiest thing in the world. You take a duck breast, you season it with a little pepper, you bury it in salt, you surround it completely with salt, and you put it in the fridge for about a day. And then you take it out, wrap it in cheesecloth, and hang it up for about a week. And that's it. That's all you do. And it's the most delicious thing. You have to slice it really, really paper thin. And then it's just so much flavor out of one thing. And then confitting the duck legs. Really, I think anything that you do that gets as much fat out of the duck as you can, because duck fat is delicious. The one thing that we did a few years ago, we were home on Christmas by ourselves because I had to work, and we made a duck that year, and the duck was okay. But what was really great were the Yorkshire puddings we made with the duck fat. Those were good. So yeah, I don't have. Jenny, do you have any duck experience?
No, I really don't. I love when you do that prosciutto. You taught me that trick, and I think you have to point out you leave a layer of the skin and fat on that when you do that, and that's part of what makes it so delicious. My dad liked to hunt, and so we ate a lot of duck growing up. And of course, those weren't farm raised, so those are very different and very delicious. And I think I like roasted duck, and I think the key, and if you read about it, I think you're supposed to prick it all over so that the fat drains out. But I really love that kind of dark meat in duck. So, classic stuff. I would love to take classic is duck la orange, right? But I would like to maybe do it. I'd like to maybe use my Yago Farms, whatever I said it, gochujang in it, maybe, and do like a glaze on it. I think would be really good. But I don't have a lot of experience cooking ducks. It's hard to find them sometimes.
City, they'll get them for you. We did a couple for our meat fest. We had a few weeks ago. I did some on the rotisserie, and they were they were okay. I think they came out a little bit tough. I think I could have worked on those a little bit more. But if we have any other questions, we've got a few more minutes here tonight. You want to thank our friends from the settlement school. I do want to, while I'm ranting at the end of the show, and it's not really a rant. I want to.
It's a rant.
Yeah, it's not a rant. I want to just tell everybody, we're under some new restrictions. We're having people are having a hard time out there. People with restaurants, people with small restaurants in particular. I want to tell everybody, get out there and get some takeout in the next little bit. And the reason I say definitely now is because remember that a lot of people were not expecting to be closed, to be closed to dine in this weekend. So a lot of people have more perishable stock on hand. A lot of restaurants have perishable stock on hand that they need to get rid of. So I would get out there and try to get some takeout this weekend. Try to maybe treat your friends. Try to spend what you would have otherwise if you're planning to go out for dinner. Tip ridiculously. Tip, and especially if there are restaurants out there who are. I know that our friends at the Wrigley Tap Room over in Corbin, they established a sort of relief fund for their employees that they had to lay off during the previous layoff. If you see restaurants out there doing that, support those places. Support the places that are supporting their employees and that are making a big deal of making this right for people, because it's it's a necessary thing. And I know people are complaining about it, but I'm telling you from somebody who is in those meetings, yeah, this needs to happen. It badly needs to happen. And just get out there and be supportive of the restaurants that are out there that have been that are keeping us fed and that are still trying to just survive and get through because a lot, there's not a whole lot of margin in restaurants anyway. So if you just try to get out there and spend that money, that's what I'm saying. And because we're all about home cooking, but right now, maybe not the time.
Real quick before we break off, Cody Jones is asking about Jerusalem artichokes. And I don't have a ton of experience with them. I've typically either sliced them and eaten them raw or grated them and used them in a salad. Maria Brayman took some watermelon radishes, which are a kind of similar texture, and she sliced them thinly and dehydrated them to make chips. And I have not done that yet, but that looks great. And I bet you could do that with Jerusalem artichokes too. Those are a beautiful plant to grow for sure. And I bet those will be real tasty. You can also, of course, just cut them up and roast them in the oven at high heat. You can also cook them and mash them and do a Jerusalem artichoke mash that's really, really tasty with them. So yay, Cody. You can also bring them to me.
Well, you can look this up. I've not actually had much experience at all. I think maybe once or twice I've cooked Jerusalem artichokes or sunchokes, but but I'd love to. So definitely hook me up.
One of the things I love about Jerusalem artichokes is the fact that, and I think this speaks what we were saying earlier to what a diversity of stories there are in Central Appalachia. So we have a small Chinese restaurant here, and we have a couple actually, but we have one, China King, I think is what it's called. And it's the owner's grandmother is an ardent gardener. And so if you drive out to Perry County Park, maybe on your way to hike on the Perry County Park trails, you'll see a house, and there's just these huge, they look like sunflowers, kind of these yellow flowers that grow as tall as the house. And those are Jerusalem artichokes. And Nandi, who is Nate's grandmother, has them growing all around, just thickly around, and they're just beautiful. And I love that we have that here. We have people from so many different cultures growing so many different things and sharing food, and we can find all these ways to marry these new traditions with our traditions and create all these new flavors that I think are really exciting. And we hear the term cultural appropriation tossed around a lot, but I think there's a pretty big difference between cultural appropriation and cultural welcoming. And that's really what I want to see in Appalachia. And what I do see with our Appalachian foodways is cultural welcoming. We're welcoming different kinds of stuff. We're welcoming different preparations and traditions and people in to share our stuff. And I think that's a really exciting thing.
Looks like Jason's back to usher us out. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the folks at the Hyman Settlement School. Thank you, Jason, and thanks for everything that they've done for us and for everything you guys are doing for. I really think that you all have picked this up and run with it. The whole idea of Appalachian foodways and the idea of just Appalachian food in general as something to be celebrated and explored and promoted. I think so. I'm glad that we can be a tiny part of that. So thanks for everything that you've done there, and thanks to everybody who tuned in tonight, and thanks to everybody who tuned into us. For those 6 years that we were doing this show, it was kind of a weird ride sometimes. And we just, we never failed to appreciate that occasionally people would tune in and listen to us, and enjoy it. So those of you who are around for it, we can't thank you enough. And Jenny, anything to close out with?
Like we always said, feed the ones you love and love the ones you feed.
Well, folks, it's certainly been just a tremendous, tremendous night. Absolutely, I could listen to Jenny and Jonathan talk food and politics and Appalachia all the time. And maybe I can twist their arms and we can do this again in our spring version of Agrilachia, because it has been such a joy. But I just want to echo what Jonathan said. Talking with folks here at the settlement school, we're big local food supporters. We're big local business supporters. And our restaurants are struggling hard. They had a really rough spring, and they got a little bit of reprieve, but still mandates and changes, and it kind of felt like a target that was constantly moving. So please get out, order takeout from if it's our small local restaurants in Hazard. If you get to Corbin, go check out the Wrigley. There's tons of places in Lexington and Louisville, but get some good local food, and it's really awesome, even if you can, like the Wrigley, because not only are you helping that restaurant, but they support so many local farmers and local people that support that food. Get out there and eat well. And we will see you soon. Our next Agrilachia is coming up, I think, the first week of December. We have Sherry Castle talking about Christmas cookies or Christmas candies. So we'll see you then. Thank you, guys.